Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da! Hi, I'm Jess.
And I'm Bree.
And this is Dungeons and Dopamine. Episode 87. And I still don't know how to do podcasting.
She even psyched herself up for that one, you guys.
Literally,
and then just
for a long time.
Lost it.
At least I didn't say episode 11, because that's the number that was in my brain.
Good job. I would have said 11.
That's where we're different. He would have at least said the podcast name first.
Maybe.
Episode 11. And then it just freeze, and I'm like, thanks everyone for listening. I'm in. So we're back after the holidays.
It has been a while.
It has. We are now in 2025. Last time we recorded was right before Christmas. We didn't even record in between or anything else.
It's been a few weeks since we've recorded. I don't even remember what we talked about. Well, Dungeons and Dragons monsters. I know we talked about that. We talked in some resolution stuff.
Yep, and a little bit of boys. I called it the boys versus girls episode, but we were just talking about the expectations put on boys and girls, and sort of a running topic for us. I feel like it's just something we talk about a lot, but we really dedicated to that time.
We need that every once in a while.
Sometimes I just like to talk. That's why I have a podcast.
Same. And sometimes I don't have time to research those episodes for the podcast. So
Truth. Fact. Mm-hmm. I'm actually really shocked that you aren't doing a Disney episode.
It might be next week. We're getting close. I mean, I could have a whole episode where I just ask you Disney questions.
Right?
Like, tell me about your shoes. Tell me about how you handled this situation. What was packed in your backpacks? How much money did you bring for this?
So, do you want to know my really dark Disney secret?
Yes.
Okay. So, our very first day of, like, full park day, we went to Hollywood Studios, which was amazing. 100% go. Don't skip. We spent the whole day there because it has Batuu. It's Star Wars land.
Right.
And then we went to the show at the end of the day, Fantasmic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, as we were leaving that show, this woman and her little family... You can't see where this is going. I
bet you
her.
loved her.
Yeah.
Best friends. She's showing up as a guest star next week.
Exactly. In my fist fighting podcast. She ran into my kid with her stroller.
What?
And, like, not a gentle run into. She slammed that freaking stroller into my kid's leg.
Oh my God.
And I am not a violent or angry or even really pushy person. I have never had such a hard time in my life. Not
Mama bear anger is a whole
someone.
different type of anger.
I was so mad. I don't know if she spoke English, but she wasn't speaking English to her family, and she thought they were the only people in the entire park. And first of all, I yelled at her, which I don't think she even heard. She didn't even look at me. Then I grabbed my kid's hand and was like, Carly, we need to walk faster because Mom's really mad.
Because Mom's going to get trespassed off the Disney properties.
I was so furious. Even Carly kept looking at me like, who are you?
Carly was like, I'm fine, Mom. I'm fine.
She was like, Mom, why did that lady hit me? And I was like... I don't know.
Because adults are awful people.
I'm going to go take care of it for you. And as you're leaving, I mean, it's a huge crowd. And if it was an accident, I would have been fine. But it didn't feel very accidental.
Right. Yeah.
And so I pulled her into the store and we ended up just kind of forgetting about it. And I didn't see the lady again the whole trip, which was really a blessing.
You go back to your hotel and you guys are like...
She's my neighbor.
With adjoining rooms that
I
she
don't
then
know
like
how it
bursts
happened,
in.
but my hotel caught on fire. It was awful. No, I'm kidding. That's what I was saying. That she was my neighbor.
Right?
I don't know how the fire started, officer.
I only shoved that match under her door.
After I poured gasoline. I didn't know that was flammable. I smoke at the pump all the time.
The smell.
So that is my dirty, dark Disney secret.
I love that your dirty Disney secret is that you got angry at someone and then walked away angrily.
It was so frustrating. And I mean, now I'm laughing about it. It's gone. It's over. I don't even think Carly remembers that it happened.
It's like the only thing she's going to remember about her Disney trip.
Yeah, it didn't cast like a pall over the trip. And I didn't end up in jail. But yeah, that's my deep, dark Disney secret. But I do have a ton of tips and would love to talk about it. I don't know that it'll be our most popular episode, but
but I would be well versed in Disney.
So apparently when Ryan and I built our upstairs last year, we didn't plan properly for game night. Family, everybody comes over, we play board games night, but me and Ryan Baldur's Gate nights.
Okay.
Because he has to move his whole rig into my office. And we sit in here, but it wasn't like the rug is not a very friendly like
for
chair
chairs
rug, and so yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen.
You're gonna need more money.
A lot more.
Because you're gonna have to buy a third setup that you can put out by his computer office setup out there and just build it into a whole like
gaming rig
couple center. Gaming rig with two giant monitors,
new computer. I see no problem with
it. Because really for your office computer in here you could go cheap.
Yeah.
Because you only need it to be able to like get on the internet and do a couple things.
Yeah.
And then the gaming computer goes out there.
All flashy and cool.
With all the different lights.
They sell a lamp at IKEA. And it kind of... so it's cool. It's like techie. It kind of looks like it's a sphere that's like breaking apart.
Okay.
It's really neat. And then someone took it up a notch and painted it like the Death Star exploding. It's legit magic. And I really, because like I'm going to put all of our Star Wars stuff out there because the upstairs is Disney besides this office.
And Disney is Star Wars now.
Exactly. No, I need to hang that in the corner. And then we can hang our Legos like attacking the Death Star.
It would be so cool.
Man. Come on.
So cool.
Anyways, this is a podcast.
What? This isn't just Brienne and Jessica hanging out and talking about things. I'm in the wrong place.
If it had been just us talking about things, there would have been a lot more expletives in my talking about that lady hitting my kid with a stroller.
Book series I'm reading right now, He Who Fights with Monsters, is insane, number one. But a new character was just introduced, and she has a kind of a role-playing, kind of lit like RPG.
Dungeon Crawler
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Thanks.
Oh, so good. It's a little less intense than that, a little less crazy than that. But they have what they call like interdimensional spaces, which is basically where they can store stuff and inventory.
Like a bag of holding and all that kind of stuff.
Except this new character's interdimensional space is a frog familiar. So it's just this little frog that can change sizes, and it like opens its mouth and like spits out your inventory that you're requesting.
It's like a bullywug.
And I love it's my new favorite.
There's bullywugs in which are frog people for those of you who aren't nerd. They're in the Viva campaign at the very beginning of their D&D campaign, their big one. And they steal all of their stuff and then hork it up when they ask for it back or when they earn it back or whatever.
It's probably similar. Yeah.
That's what I think of immediately. Okay, but check out this transition, all right? Wouldn't it be horrible, speaking of bad things happening to your kids and like mama bear mode activating?
Words.
Wouldn't it be terrifying to get like stalker letters or something about your child?
Oh goodness.
So
on that
with
note,
that in mind, and then I just talk about tigers again.
Here's Tigers Part 2. This one's specifically about white tigers.
I'm gonna do this in growls and roars.
Tiger language that I wrote myself.
It's gonna be amazing. This is the episode where everyone quits. Just hard stop. We're done. Cold turkey.
No one ever played another episode.
Not even at the beginning. Like, they didn't even listen to this point. Everyone somehow inherently knew this.
The whole world was like, I'm out.
Speaking of that, not that, but before that.
Right.
I'm going to tell you about the Circleville letters. Circleville is a little city in Ohio.
Which isn't very far away.
It is not very far away. It's situated along the Scioto River. Take from that what you will.
Sure.
It's south of Columbus, not too far, 25 miles. So,
okay.
You know, you could go there for a day. Actually, if you visit the Circleville website, it says one of the number one activities is to do a scavenger hunt in Columbus, Ohio. So they don't even want you there. They're like, the best thing to do in Circleville is leave.
Is be somewhere else.
I don't have that in my notes. I just
That's
heard it on
amazing.
one of the videos I watched, and it made me laugh. Okay, sorry. So one of the reasons that they do say that, I assume, is because their population in 2020 was 13,927, which is pretty small.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the 1970s, and in the 1970s, it was only 11,100.
So not only is it small, but it's not growing very quickly at all.
Exactly.
So only 2,000 people have
because when
probably
you show
not
up,
moved
they
there.
send you
They've
away.
been born there.
Exactly. So in 1977, Circleville became kind of popular because they had a scandal. There were 20 years and thousands of letters that happened in Circleville around this time. The first letter arrived to superintendent of one of the nearby high schools. His name was Gordon Massey. It was written in really big blocky letters, which I'll show you later, and then I'll post the images of the letters that I have. I will share. But he got the very first letter. It was full of really big accusations, and I could not find this letter. I heard people read it, but I could not find it myself. So I'm not sure if I just wasn't searching well but I've got others. So I'll just give you the gist of this one. It was basically, hey, stop hitting on bus drivers. They don't want you. I know what you're doing. Don't do it anymore. So that's what that was. Which
okay.
is, I mean, just to start off, even if the dude was skeeving on bus drivers, that had to be creepy. Or even if he wasn't skeeving on bus drivers, that had to be a really creepy thing to get.
Right.
Like, you almost feel like, is this one of my friends pranking me or something?
Right.
But he was, at the time he was married, he was just about to go through a divorce. Right at the beginning of when these letters start. He did also
he was creeping on bus drivers.
Exactly. He was a great dude. And then he did have a kid or two. I can't remember, but it's not that important. A few days later, the school board received a letter that he was using his position to harass female bus drivers. And then a third letter went to his superior with all of that same information in it. Then the letter writer changed focus and it got big. Mary Gillespie. I should be able to say this correctly. I've read it 9,000 times and heard it spoken 1 million. We're just going to go with Mary G.
You really researched this topic.
Look, I've been doing
millions
this for 19
of hours.
years. I know who the letter writer is.
It's you.
I started in 1977. It's no big. I was a pretty amazing fetus. I wasn't even a fetus then. So Mary was married with 2 children, and she got a letter accusing her of having an affair with Massey. Her first letter was just kind of like, stop being with Massey. Yeah, like don't be with him. And then along the lines of don't lie when they ask you about him. So basically it told her, leave him. No, he doesn't care for you. Don't lie when they ask you about it. Blah, 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 blah. Almost like they had a plan cut out for her to be telling. Then she gets another letter, and this one's just uglier. I'll read this one. It says, "Lady, this is your last chance to report him. I know you are a pig and will prove it and shame you out of Ohio. A pig sneaks around and meets other women's husbands behind their backs only. causes families, homes, and marriages to suffer. You are such a pig, and I will prove it. Why doesn't he come to your rescue, or has he too much to lose? His wife, in which pigs like you take advantage of his $28,500 a year job, or his kickbacks. How's your little girl? Will she grow up to be like you?
Was this woman a bus driver?
She was.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, I did bury the lead on that. Mary did drive the bus.
Sorry if that was like the...
That's the big reveal at the end.
And they were all bus drivers.
Mary was a bus driver. And then Ryan was going to put in bum, bum, bum. And then it was going to end. But whatever. So,
sorry. Just end here.
So Mary's letter was... That kind of got gross. It's very much uglier. It's very much accusational.
Plus it ends with
your child.
A reference to your child.
Yeah, which is at the point where I would start, throwing hands.
Yeah. As we know.
I would start being Disney mom. The letters from that point on never stopped coming. They got more and more violent and more threatening. Eventually, they sent a letter to her husband, Ron. His letter talked about the affair and suggested that he catch them and kill them.
Oh. Can you imagine getting a letter from somebody that's like, hey, I know your husband's cheating on you. You should murder him.
Right? You should catch them in the act and murder them.
The person is angrier about the situation than you are.
You're like, what is going on? So this letter suggested that Ron catch them in the act and kill them. They also threatened Ron if he didn't take action, and detailed his car, what car he drove, and the children's school.
Oh.
Which
they keep bringing up the kids.
Yes, which I hate. So he ended up taking the letters to the sheriff, and the sheriff office said, I'm sorry, he's too busy for that right now.
I got this anonymous letter that wants me to murder my spouse and keeps referencing my children. Can we please take this seriously?
Yes.
No. And it's the 70s. What could they have possibly been doing in Circleville, Ohio?
Right.
In the 70s.
With all 11,100 of their people.
Right.
Ugh. At this point, he obviously confronts Mary, and he's like, hey, are you having an affair? She says, absolutely not. I also got some letters. And of course, it just keeps getting worse from here. So now the letter writer decides to make signs and post them up around town in very public places along Mary's bus route. And a lot of these, they were all really vile, but a lot of them alluded to her and Massey having an affair, but also Massey being involved with Ron and Mary's daughter in a very vile way. And she was 8 years old at the time, which is sick. So Ron would drive around before he went to work on Mary's bus route and pull all the signs down. So good guy. That was something that his sister told us, in interviews and stuff now. And I would like to tell you about his family a little bit. Ron's sister was named Karen Freshour. She was married to Paul Freshour, and they were some of the first people that Ron and Mary went to when they started getting these letters and the sheriff was too busy for them. Mm-hmm. They just went and shared the information. They asked them, what would you do? And can you help keep our kids safe? And all of that kind of stuff. They eventually got to the point where Ron and Mary kind of thought they knew who was writing the letters. And about 5 months after everything began, Mary got her first letter. Mary went to Florida with the sister, Karen, and a few friends. They just probably needed a freaking vacation.
Right?
I would bring my kids because there's no way I would leave my kids like that.
No.
But this is also a very different time.
That's true. The 70s were wild.
While Ron was home with the kids, he got a phone call. And the phone call talked about basically the affair. And Ron said out loud while his kids were in the room, I recognize your voice and I am coming to finish this. And according to his daughter, hung up the phone, grabbed his keys, kissed her goodbye, and left. And unfortunately, he never made it home. Oh, he did grab his gun as well on the way out. So,
how old are the kids at this point?
Between 8 and 12.
Oh.
They're little. 1 hour later, Ron was pronounced dead. It was nighttime. He was going too fast down a road. He skipped a curb and crashed. The thing is, his family, especially Paul, his brother, did not believe that he just crashed his car. For one, he was responsible for his kids right then. His wife was in Florida. For two, allegedly, there were bullet holes in the side of the truck. And three, he had a blood alcohol level of 0.16, and it was said that Ron didn't drink.
And that's double drunk.
That's
like
yeah.
the super drunk law.
If you didn't drink often and you were that drunk, you'd probably be out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd be looking
not super functional.
Exactly. Paul, the brother, believes that he found the person he was looking for and got into a shootout, crashed his car. But the sheriff ruled it a accidental drunken death and impounded the truck before the family could see it, which is really weird. Mm-hmm. And then they never got it. They never saw the truck again. So there was no way to show if there were bullet wounds and it could have been the sheriff trying to protect them from a probably pretty grisly scene.
Right.
Who knows? There's so many different ways that you could look at this.
And the 70s.
In small town.
It wasn't...
Such a weird thing, you know? So very sad. He seemed like he was pretty decent, pulling those signs down every time. And that was kind of sad. The letter writer claimed that Ron was killed by Mary and Gordon Massey. Up to Ron's death, Mary swore she had no affair with Massey, but not too long after the accident, Mary and Massey started to see each other publicly. Now, trauma bonding is a thing.
Yeah.
You never know, but also you're already cheating and now he's gone and that problem's out of the way.
Died under mysterious circumstances while you just happen to be out of the state.
Yeah. The first two people to really receive the letter. Anyway, there's a lot of what ifs and could be's in this story. I unfortunately do not have a great ending for you.
That's okay. Now that you've talked about it, they'll find some new evidence next week and they'll close the case.
Still waiting for the voyage manuscript. Sorry, manuals. I am waiting for a manual. As I mentioned, Massey was married, but at the beginning of all the letter mess, he did get divorced. I did not mention was that one of the reasons his wife wanted the divorce was because of extreme cruelty. Oh. From Massey, of course. I want to divorce him because I am very cruel. The letters kept coming. Like I said, there were over 1,000 of them. In this 20-year period.
So many letters.
It's so sick. It's so crazy. Then, in February of 1983, Mary was driving her bus route and saw a sign that had vile things about her 13-year-old at the time daughter. Which, by the way, leave the children alone.
Right.
Stop. This small town, she's a teenager. Leave her alone.
Right. Everybody's going to know who she is. Like, this has already been a problem. Ugh.
I can't imagine. I should have looked into what happened to the kids after, but I just couldn't bring myself to it, to be completely honest. So she pulled her bus over. She went and grabbed it off of the fence, and she noticed that the sign had a string attached to it, and the string went to a box. So she grabbed the box. She brought it home. She opened it up. There was a gun in the box.
What?
And when police looked at it, they said this was rigged so that you pulled the sign off of the fence and it would have shot you either in the head or the chest had she been in the wrong position. But it failed to fire for whatever reason.
Holy crow.
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 So sick. I mean, of course she's going to stop and pull a sign down about her daughter, and this was clearly a setup. Serial number was filed off of the gun, but they did recover it. This led to a man in Columbus, Ohio, who told police that they had sold the gun to none other than Paul, the brother.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah. Now, he might have been brother-in-law. I don't know if the sister was around. I'm not sure how the family dynamic went, but still brother. Brother Paul.
Brother Paul. What?
Paul claimed he purchased the gun for safety, probably being startled about what was going on with Mary and Ron had died, and he said that the gun had been stolen. How convenient.
Of course.
And he knew who stole the gun, but he wasn't going to tell the police.
That's not suspicious at all.
No. No.
I know this gun almost killed somebody, and it is mine. But it wasn't in my possession. But I know who had it, but I'm not going to tell you.
Exactly. What? So, Paul cooperated very well with police. He let them search his home. He allowed them to do a polygraph test, which he failed. He also provided writing samples. One video that I had watched on it said that he actually was asked to copy the letters themselves, which feels like setting him up.
Right. Or like, we're trying to figure out if you did this crime. Will you write these letters for us?
Exactly.
Like, of course she would use different handwriting.
Yes.
Oh, that is my letter. You write it exactly the same.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't even need to look at it. I can just do it word for word.
Those letters. I didn't know you meant those letters.
Absolutely me. So they did say that his handwriting matched, which, what the heck? Now, this is when Paul's wife, Karen, comes up and tells police that she had found letters in their home. She said that she had found one ripped up in the toilet, some in his trunk, some just about the house, and her son Mark corroborated that story, said he'd seen the letters around the house too. However, when they asked her or Mark to provide them, they could not. They claimed they'd thrown them away.
Because that's what I do with scary, suspicious letters.
Seriously. It's this whole case is so weird. So Paul went to prison. I wrote, yay. Just like that, lowercase, Y-A-Y. He was not ever actually charged for the letters, but they were allowed to be used as evidence in his trial. The 80s, man. Cocaine. Right. It's really weird. Friends and family were shook, besides his wife and son. He went to a mental hospital for a little bit. They all claimed he was a good guy and he would never do this, which, I mean, we hear in a lot of serial killer stuff and things, so, I mean, you can take that as far as you can throw it, I guess, but he did have an alibi for the day that the gun was set up on the fence, the booby trap was set up. But he had taken that day off work. However, he was having work done on his home, and there were several witnesses that could say they had seen him there. He went to jail. Like, that should be the end of the story, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not, because that wouldn't be enough. Actually, it would be, but it's still not done, so you still have to listen.
So too bad. So sad.
No one directly said Paul had written the letters. Karen very much pointed to that, but never quite said exactly.
Strangely, I found all these unmailed letters in my house.
I just threw them away.
But I'm sure it wasn't my husband writing them.
Hundreds of more letters went out after he was in prison. And now you can mail stuff from prison, but it's very vetted.
Search.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the warden of the prison not only called Paul a model inmate, but swears that all of his ingoing and outgoing mail was being monitored. Not only that, but some of these letters were actually poisoned. Like, they had poison on them. So the letter writer was escalating in a big way.
Who were these letters going to? Still to Mary?
Yes, like all over town. Like, just all over Circleville, people who weren't even involved,
and just get a letter about
terrified
Dirty Mary and how she is sleeping with Massey. And
yes,
interesting.
Oh, and the other weird thing about the letters was that they were postmarked from Columbus, but he was in prison in Lima. What?
Right. So he must have had an accomplice.
That's what a lot of people thought. Investigators swore it was still Paul, or an accomplice, as you just mentioned, and when it came up for his parole, they denied it because he was still writing letters, which he wasn't even convicted of.
Right.
He was convicted of attempted murder because of the booby trap. I can't with my brain and thoughts. Then Paul got a letter of his own.
Oh. Oh.
And I'm so excited to read this one to you. Fresh hour. Now, when are you going to believe that you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago when we set them up, they pay. Set him up. Don't listen at all. The letter writer is also not smart. No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Haha. Tell no one of this letter. I saw the paper. Great news. Great. The sheriff loved it. Haha. Do you believe it now? Do you?
Oh, that's creepy.
So creepy. So that was Paul's letter. And he was released from prison in 1994. And ironically, that is when the letters stopped. Paul did take this case to the FBI and tried to get them to work with him, but they never got back to him. So apparently his FBI agent thought he was boring.
Or, yeah.
It's so weird. Now,
because I'm like 100%, I was like, nope, it was Paul and his wife.
End of story. Yeah.
And then I got weirder.
So it's going to get weirder still.
Oh, there's more?
Uh-huh.
Oh, good.
Not a whole lot, but yes. Paul claimed he was innocent until the day he died. Many agreed with Paul that he could never have done this. Some recent investigations, podcast and like 48 Hours did a case on this, and they all did determine that it was Paul. Like, they're sure that it was Paul. Now, I want to talk about Paul's wife. So it was a little sus that she wasn't able to bring those letters out.
Yeah, I found dozens of those letters in my house.
He's absolutely guilty. So she and Paul were married for 20 years. In October of 1982, not long before the booby trap was set up, she claimed that Paul was a cheater and used to beat her up and filed for divorce. She said that one time he attacked her until she had a black eye, and then he went to counseling. This was earlier in their marriage, and they stayed together after that. But Paul was granted the home and custody of their younger daughters in the divorce.
Which is super rare.
Especially if he had been,
in the 70s.
Yes, and if he had been abusive. I mean, that's a big strike on your record, so that's kind of strange.
Do we know what Paul's job was?
He worked at the Anheuser-Busch plant, I think it was.
Or what about Ron? Do we know what he did?
I don't remember what Ron did.
Okay.
They did have a son. He was grown and decided to live with his mother on Mary's property. Mary, who, received the first letter, was set up to be shot in a trailer on their property. So she claimed Mark was afraid of Paul. As I mentioned, she could not provide the letters, and Mark did corroborate the story, saying that they still he'd seen them too. In 1993, I swear this is involved with Karen, but bear with me a minute. In 1993, Unsolved Mysteries did an episode about the letters, and they received a letter of their own.
What?
And I'm going to read it to you with great pleasure, apparently. For Gert. That wasn't the letter. That was just me. Forget Circleville, Ohio. Do nothing to hurt Sheriff Radcliffe. If you come to Ohio, you sickos, you will pay. The Circleville writer. And
weird.
They said, we don't care. And they showed up anyway.
You will not intimidate us.
So what was really weird was that a local woman did an interview with them. Before she was set to do the interview, Karen called her and said, don't do this. Don't do it. You shouldn't be talking to anybody about this. And then, reportedly, she parked outside of where they were filming these things and took pictures of everybody who came in and out of the building as they were doing the interviews. There was also, this is a very random small detail, she borrowed a typewriter from someone just before the letters started to be typed instead of written out.
Did no one ever look at her?
I guess they just really thought it was cleaned up with Paul.
Women don't murder people.
Exactly.
This is the 70s.
And there was an analysis done on the letters, and someone said this almost reads as a woman who is trying to appear to be a man writing these letters.
I am now convinced Karen did it.
I lean toward Karen myself, which is maybe why I have so much evidence that she did it.
And she was mad at Paul for being a dirty, awful person.
Yep.
So she then set him up as the writer.
And if she thought he was cheating, then she would have been really mad if she found out that her sister-in-law was cheating on her brother or her brother-in-law. Who knows? Someone knows the right way it works, but not me. Why would I do that? Now, there's a couple other people. Mark, the son, was he guilty? Apparently, Paul wouldn't tell the police who stole the gun because he very firmly believed it was Mark.
Okay.
And that he didn't want to rat his son out to the police, which, I mean, maybe we could understand that.
Yeah, but I feel like Mark has way less motive than anybody else.
I can see that, unless he did hurt his mother. Yeah. Beat up his mother, and especially if he would have been...
But then why get Mary and Massey involved?
Right. That's true. Good point.
I'm mad at my dad, so I'm going to screw up my aunt's life.
Exactly. She's cheating with a blah, blah, blah. He also refused to go see his dad in jail, ever. He wouldn't go see him. And then he killed himself in 2002. Oh. Karen said that he had been struggling with depression his whole life, which, wow.
I would too with all of that
exactly.
Going on.
Ugh. So the last suspect, and probably the one with the least amount of actual motive, is William Massey, who is Gordon's son.
Okay.
And he was an older teen when his parents were divorced, which is when the letters started coming. He knew that his mom had said cruelty was a big part of the divorce, so his dad could have been a very bad guy, beating people up. Maybe he was trying to protect, like, Mary, and then it just went too far. I don't know. And then some claim that one of the letters was actually signed Bill Massey, which William, Bill, could have.
What?
But that's all we know. That's it. That's all we know about the letters. It could have been all of them.
Just I don't a weird have an little answer. Small town.
So weird.
Creepy. That story super creeps me out even more because especially like some of those letters, when I started at the township, there is a resident of the township that is not completely mentally stable that harasses township employees.
Oh my god.
His mom was the clerk like years and years and years ago, and he's off his rocker, and like I would get emails and letters from this man, and he would use FOIA requests, so Freedom of Information Act requests. He would use that to harass me, and he would like ask for information that he had already asked for multiple times. Like he had asked the previous clerk for it, and I knew all of that. And if I didn't answer it completely correctly, because I was brand new at this job that I had no idea what I was doing,
right?
He ended up suing me through the township and wrote long letters that were just like rambling, kind of like those. One of them, it had my full name, my address, how old I was, and then just all of these accusations about how I was like gaslighting him, and I was harassing him and like refusing to answer these requests, and just like all of this like crazy sounding language.
And it sounds so simple. I mean, we're kind of chuckling about it, but not you, obviously, 'cause that's terrifying.
Well, and I don't work there. Well, I don't really work there anymore, and it never went past that.
Sure.
And that was when I first started, so I didn't know him, and I was very uncomfortable with it, and just
absolutely
new at the job and had no idea what was going on. And I've been face to face with him a couple times now, and he's just a weird, angry dude.
His bark is bigger than his bite.
Yeah, exactly.
I just can't imagine getting a letter that says something about my kid and where they go to school and what my car looks like, and that just terrifies me.
And for it to be anonymous. Like, yes. I knew exactly where these letters were coming from. I knew who he was. I knew there was a background. I knew there had already been, like, people were familiar with him. The cops were already familiar with him. Even if something did go weird, there was already...
There's so much there already.
But in like an anonymous letters harassing their children, like signs throughout this small town.
The signs disgust me. Mm-hmm. Leave those children out of it. Always. Just leave them alone.
Right. And what it like how does it help anybody, but especially the kids, to not only are you like dragging their parents through the mud, but then you bring them into it like it's their issue.
Like, they could do anything about it.
Right.
An 8-year-old kid cannot stop their parent from the choices
yeah.
that they're making.
Their alleged affairs. And imagine, like, finding out or thinking that your parents are cheating on each other.
Yes.
And that's how you find out, is because some stranger is plastering it all through your tiny little small town.
And to lose your dad because he went out angry. Now, whether he left drunk or, got drunk and then made a bad choice, or whether he was set up.
Yeah.
There's so much. And then the sheriff is kind of shady, and one of the letters talks about leaving him alone, and it's all just really wild.
So that's why I asked, my crime mind from all of my Law and Order episodes that I watched. I asked, what their professions were. Were they cops, or were they involved in that system?
They were all very blue-collar workers, which, I'm not saying a cop isn't, but they're in a different level of it. They're government.
And you don't get so much of the, you always see in the shows, the small town cops all stick together, and so they cover up the evidence because they're helping, and he abuses his wife, but we're all going to cover up for him. Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't that.
And if you watch it was really interesting to watch different news and podcasts and stuff cover it, because everyone had a thought about who it might be. None of these people, in my opinion, were clean of their issues. I mean, there was clearly a lot happening. When you get bored in Ohio, apparently you start drama.
And then people get murdered.
Exactly.
It would make a great novel.
Right. The Circle of I actually think there might be a movie about it, and it's...
Oh, cool.
There's a lot to see, a lot to hear about it. And I had never heard about it until...
Yeah, that's the first... And it's not very far away.
No. It's crazy.
Interesting.
Yep, and I don't have an answer for you. So that's how I love to end my episodes, or my topics.
I don't have a transition for that. It's sad and interesting.
Ridiculous.
And I want to write a book about it.
Right? It's wild. It blows my mind.
I love it. I hate it, but I love it.
Right.
No good transition. I could make a really awful, Dogman joke right now, but since I'm then going to talk about Abigail, it probably wouldn't go that well.
Right.
My topic is a little sad. Zach and I unfortunately had to put our dog to sleep last week. Abby was our 12-and-a-half-year-old dog. She was very old. We had her for 12 years and 8 days. So
did you get her as a puppy? I felt like she was kind of big when you got her.
Let me cover that.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to spend too long talking about her because I don't want to cry and I don't want to make you cry.
I appreciate that.
And we know how easily you cry. But we actually brought Abby home on New Year's Eve at the end of 2012. She came to us in a pretty spectacular way. We were looking for a puppy, and I think I had petfinder.com or something up on my computer at work, and my coworker Heather happened to walk up and she said, "Oh, you guys are ready for a puppy?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." She said, "My friend Mary just posted on Facebook that she has this puppy that she has to rehome because she's too rough with her older boys, and if she doesn't rehome her today, she's gonna have to go to the pound." I was like, "Well, give me your number and we'll go meet her. We'll see. I'm going to be picky about it. We'll see." And long story short, through the conversation, we realized that Mary, the woman who had Abby, who was Abby's first mom, had bought Zach's grandma's house that Zach's grandma had just moved out of a month or two ahead of that, and the house she had lived in Zach's entire life, which also happened to be literally around the corner from the new house we had just bought from my father-in-law's childhood best friend. So there was actually a trail in our woods that went from the house we had just bought to the house that we then got Abby from. So Abby was obviously meant to be our dog.
I was just so picky went out the window.
Yeah, there was, as soon as we realized that this was Zach's grandma's house that this puppy was at, we were pretty sure we were going to bring her home. But then the minute we showed up at this house, Mary let Abby out, and Abby ran straight to my husband and never looked back. She was in love with my husband from the minute she met him. I could have been chopped liver. She did not care that I was even there. She was very much in love with my husband. So we brought her home. It was kind of cool. The kids that lived in Grandma's house now actually did come visit a couple times. They came to visit Abby Abby by walking through the woods, and they'd bring her toys, and she was always a really good dog. She just was really big. So when we got her, we were told she was 60 pounds, and she was a Black Lab St. Bernard mix. But we brought her to the vet the very next week, and she was actually 90 pounds. So at 6 months old, Abby was 90 pounds, which is why they ended up having to get rid of her. Because at 90 pounds and 6 months old, she was pretty rough with the 7-year-old and 5-year-old boys.
Oh, sure. Yep.
But she was always really good with their 1-year-old baby. And I think it was because the baby was at eye level.
Sure.
So Abby could, I don't know, they just connected better, but she was really rough with the older boys. They would get off the bus and she would bound out to meet them and knock them down. So we end up with this 90-pound puppy, and
I always thought she would have been a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
So talking to the vet, we eventually determined we figured she was a Mastiff mix. She had the brown face and the
big floppy
snout,
lips,
but we do believe she was also mixed with Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
That's what she looked like to me.
Yes, and if you don't know what a Rhodesian Ridgeback is, they're actually originally from Africa, and they were lion herding dogs. And they're very big. When they get upset or when they bark, they get a mohawk down the back of their back. So when she would bark, she'd get this cool little mohawk that would just raise up. It was really cool. So fully grown, Abby ended up weighing about 125 pounds. She had a big, scary bark and that cool mohawk when she was upset.
She loved lights.
She was a gentle giant. We did get her, or we were happy she was so big, because at the time Zach was working off shifts, so I was home alone at night a lot. He was either on second or third shift, so I was home alone overnight.
You had some weird stuff too, where that old house that you had lived in got listed as for sale. Yeah. So people were coming and looking in your windows.
Yep. And the people we had bought the house from, there was family drama, and a brother that would show up and sit outside our house sometimes. So we had this giant dog with a big scary bark, which made me feel very secure, especially knowing that she was the gentlest giant ever once you actually met her. She was the size of a literal human, but she was actually very sneaky and stealthy, and she could squeeze into the smallest little spots. She really liked climbing into a chair with Zach, and they would both somehow fit into one armchair. She had some really silly quirks. She absolutely loved toys, but she would only play with them for about 15 minutes, and then she would sneak them outside and bury them. And if we tried to stop her, she would wait until we were distracted, and then you could literally watch her try to sneak past us with toys in her mouth so that she could go bury them. Her favorite food was carrots. So especially in the days where I worked at Ross, I would grade papers sitting on the couch, and we would just eat a bag of carrots together. She would drool and salivate over carrots more than she would any other food. And she loved lights. This was probably our fault. We noticed that she really liked a flashlight when she was a puppy, and we encouraged that, and she was basically a 125-pound cat. So she would chase any lights or reflections. If the sun was coming in the window and hit anything to put a reflection on the ceiling, she would chase it, or lay on the ground and stare up at it. Laser lights, she would attack laser light pointers the same way a cat would. It was honestly the most entertaining thing that I have ever seen.
She spent hours at a Halloween party staring at the lights that were they were shining on the ground. It fell over and no one would fix it because she was hilarious. Hours.
Yes. Whole days sometimes, especially if we were outside with the sunlight or something. She would spend whole days outside. She also really, really loved mud, so we had to stop bringing her to Zach's parents' house because they have a pond, and the minute we stopped paying attention to her, she would run out to the pond and roll herself in the mud until she went from being a brown dog to a black dog. Our favorite thing, she would make dragon noises, which was kind of a mix between a purr, a groan, and a growl. If you rubbed a certain spot on her ear, she would make this beautiful dragon noise. Oh, speaking of the lights, we actually briefly lost Connor once when he was 3 or 4 years old. He ran off in our yard, and we didn't know what direction he went in, and we were able to find him pretty quickly because he was carrying a Star Wars flashlight, which means Abby was following him right next to him. She was the very best. So in her honor, I have a 2-part We Don't Deserve Dogs topic. And that was half of the first one, just talking about how great Abby was. And to finish this episode, I'm just going to talk about some interesting facts about dogs. So according to an article on newscientist.com, dogs are the only animal that was domesticated back in the human hunter-gatherer days. So we know, like, obviously we've domesticated more animals now. We've domesticated cats and, like, rodents and things. But dogs are the only animal that shows evidence that, number one, we domesticated them first. They were the first animal to be domesticated, but they were also the first animal domesticated before farming. To put it in reference, they think that dogs started to descend from wolves about 27,000 to 40,000 years ago. That's when they kind of went their separate ways to become domesticated dogs versus wolves. And the oldest found burial of a pet dog, so the burial site you would assume that it was buried with family, so it was probably some sort of pet, happened 14,700 years ago, and humans started farming about 11,700 years ago. So we're talking like quite a bit of time where dogs were the only domesticated animal. This same article kind of hypothesized that we kind of domesticated dogs on accident. So back in the hunter-gatherer days, human diets had to include a lot of like fattier meat and vegetables and all the other things because we're omnivores, whereas wolves could live and survive on very lean meat. So humans and wolves were both the apex predators, but instead of having to compete for food, we were able to share it because we ate different parts of the animals. So the article hypothesizes that we domesticated these wolves on accident because we essentially took what we needed from these animals that we killed, threw out the scraps, and the wolves were like, hey, look at these animals. They're just like leaving us this food. We should hang around them some more. And then then the humans start to notice, oh, these cute little puppies are hanging around. Maybe we should feed them more meat. And then they start training them, and it becomes this symbiotic relationship where they can use each other to hunt. So they're taking down bigger animals because you have humans and wolves hunting together. Or they start to use dogs, not just for hunting, but for other purposes. Of course, that leads all the way down the evolutionary road to where now they sleep in our beds and we carry them in purses, and they live better lives now than even humans did 40,000 years ago.
Yeah, my dogs are not noble at all. Could never hunt. They would starve immediately.
I like it when the food just appears in my bowl.
Where is it?
Another study that I read that was pretty scientific and way over my head shows that dogs are among a small group of animals that show pro-social behavior, which means that dogs will choose an option that benefits another dog just to be nice.
Aww.
So whereas even primates, when they were put through this study, they will typically only choose an option if it benefits themselves and another primate. So in all of the examples, it was some sort of food experiment where, like, if the animal pulled one lever, they would get nothing, and the dog next to them or the animal next to them would get nothing. But if they pulled a different lever, they would get nothing, but the animal next to them would get a treat or a piece of food or whatever. Dogs were some of the only animals where they were noticed that they would choose the lever that got their friend food or got the neighboring animal food, even if it didn't get them anything, which I thought was incredible. And it also went further than, like, it wasn't just paired dogs, so it wasn't just if they knew the dog or a dog that was in their pack. It could even be stranger dogs, which was another phenomenon not really noticed in other animals. They might choose it if it was like their pack member or there's an animal that they knew, but if it was a stranger animal, they definitely weren't going to make that choice.
Cats didn't even try.
Cats tried to murder the animal next to them and steal the food. No.
That's exactly what happened.
So, again, we don't deserve dogs. Dog noses are obviously super unique. So So a dog nose print is as unique as a human fingerprint and can even be used for identification in some countries. Dog noses can also smell in different directions. So when they smell, they not only know what they're smelling, but like what direction it came from. They have multiple directional pathways, so they can breathe in and out and breathe and smell at the same time. They have about 300 million olfactory sensors in their noses, while humans only have about 6 million. And of those receptors, they can do all kinds of different things besides just smelling scents like humans do. Dog noses can also smell pheromones, which can make them incredibly sensitive to how we feel, things like medical changes, how other dogs or other animals feel, or what's going on in their lives. They can also sense heat or thermal radiation with their noses, not just like, oh, I can tell it's cold outside because my nose is cold. But they can like sense different temperatures, like your body temperature. They'd be able to, they can sense when it's different. They can sense medical changes, and they can even smell time. So
oh, wow.
When they're tracking a scent, they can tell when a scent is older or newer, or how long it's been there, or whether it's fresh or old. But with all of that, they have a lot less taste buds than humans. And obviously they don't see quite like we do. I think the standard belief is that they're colorblind, which we know now isn't true. They do see some shades of some colors. They can definitely see some shades of blues and yellows and reds and things like that. And then just the last couple things, dogs have been known to poop in alignment with the Earth's magnetic field. So
what?
Sometimes that's why it can take them so long to find a spot, or why they like circle things.
That doesn't make me feel more patient, but that's funny.
Right? A border collie named Chaser has the largest vocabulary of any other known dog. He's been taught over 1,022 names of items and can recognize and categorize them according to function and shape. This is something that humans typically learn to do at the age of 3. After the fall of the Roman Empire, people were more concerned about their survival, and breeding and training dogs wasn't as much of a priority during that time, so there began to be like large packs of dogs that ran the streets, and they think this is where the fear of werewolves come from.
Oh.
Which I think you kind of covered in one of your topics as well. But
I think it might have been one of my folklore.
That could be.
Sorry, there's a book over there specifically of folklore.
Yes.
I was hoping it had the word folklore on it.
Folklore.
Folklore.
And the last fact that I have for today is bloodhounds are so good at scent tracking that their trailing results can actually be used as scientific evidence in a court of law.
That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
I still can't get over that they pooped that way.
Right? So next week I'm going to talk specifically about working dogs and like helper dogs. So I'll get more into some of the scent things and what they can sense on that. But that's all I have for today.
I love it. I love dogs. Also, that's obviously why the Roman Empire fell.
Yeah, because they
people
stopped paying attention to the dogs.
Yeah, like, duh.
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 Don't you know anything Roman Empire?
This is clearly in every book ever written all the time. Even if it wasn't about the Roman Empire.
It's just a footnote at the bottom.
This
just
happened
FYI.
because of dogs. This was Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast. I know how to close it because it's all written down. I just don't know how to open it.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube.
You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can also find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit.
Maybe not TikTok for long, but we'll figure that out and switch it around.
Maybe we'll finally make our Reddit active if TikTok expands.
And I'll start putting all of our shorts on YouTube. Maybe not, though. You can reach out to us on any of those social medias except for maybe not TikTok. Or at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions.
Thank you.
We love you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.